It was a crisp October morning when the cameras caught Emily Walsh being led out of the Monroe County Courthouse in handcuffs. Her face was pale, smeared with mascara from hours of crying. She didn't speak as reporters swarmed, microphones shoved inches from her face, their voices slicing through the cold. "Emily, did you really kill her?" Before we dive into one of the most twisted stories of betrayal you'll ever hear, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. If you're obsessed with dark true crime tales, twisted minds, and shocking endings, you won't want to miss what we uncover here. Now let's dive in. The question hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Emily looked up, her eyes wide and empty. Her voice, when it finally came, was barely above a whisper. "I didn't kill anyone. I swear." To the public, she was a monster, a young woman who'd betrayed her best friend in the most brutal way imaginable. But to those who knew her, Emily had always been the quiet one. The good student. The girl next door. The kind of person who bought birthday cards weeks in advance and cried during dog commercials. But this wasn't the Emily they thought they knew. In every photo there she was, smiling arm in arm with Grace Turner. They were inseparable. From the outside, it was the kind of friendship people envied. Summer road trips, college dorm selfies, matching necklaces engraved with the word, sisters. But behind the filtered Instagram stories and late-night FaceTime calls, something darker festered. Because Grace wasn't just Emily's best friend, she was the only person who knew all her secrets. And sometimes the person who knows everything knows exactly how to ruin you. The story really began 3 years before the arrest. It began with a phone call, a body, and a lie so convincing, it sent police, and an entire town, chasing the wrong woman. But the truth was hiding in plain sight. This is the story of manipulation, betrayal, and a friendship that masked a murderer. This is how one woman framed her best friend for murder, and almost got away with it. They met in college, two young women from different worlds who instantly clicked. Jade Harper, the vibrant, wildly ambitious journalism student with a sharp wit and infectious laugh, and Tessa Morgan, soft-spoken, sweet-natured, and endlessly supportive. On the surface, their friendship was storybook perfect. Study sessions turned into sleepovers, and soon they were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences, vacationing together, even moving in together after graduation. Their bond was the envy of many. To the outside world, Jade and Tessa were closer than sisters. Tessa often posted glowing tributes on social media, "My soul twin, my rock, my forever." Jade, the more private of the two, would simply smile and say, "Tessa? She's family." But beneath the laughter and Instagram-perfect selfies, subtle cracks were forming. While Tessa settled into a steady job as a paralegal and began dating a kind, quiet man named Ethan, Jade struggled. Her dreams of becoming a high-profile journalist hadn't panned out. She bounced from gig to gig, freelance work, unpaid internships, and temp jobs that never seemed to stick. And though she never admitted it, she resented how easily life seemed to fall into place for Tessa. Then came the night Jade didn't come home. Tessa waited, worried. Jade eventually stumbled in at 4 a.m., mascara streaked down her cheeks, her phone shattered, hands trembling. She wouldn't say what happened, only that she'd been let down again, and that people were out to get her. Tessa comforted her, tucked her into bed, and didn't ask questions. That's what best friends do. But from that moment on, something changed. Jade became colder, moodier. She'd pick fights over nothing. Sometimes she'd disappear for days, then reappear as if nothing had happened. When Tessa confronted her gently about the distance, Jade smiled and said, "Some people just have to fight harder for what they want. You wouldn't understand." And Tessa, loyal to a fault, forgave. Every time. What she didn't know was that Jade had already begun spinning a web of deceit. One where Tessa wasn't the beloved best friend, but the obstacle standing in her way. It began subtly. Jade didn't just want Tessa out of the way, she wanted to be Tessa. Her job, her boyfriend, her life. And so, piece by piece, she started to pull the strings. First, it was little things. Misplaced keys, deleted emails, forgotten appointments. Tessa chalked it up to stress. But Jade knew exactly what she was doing, planting seeds of doubt. She'd slip into Tessa's room when she wasn't home, scroll through her messages and study her mannerisms. She was collecting everything she needed, not just to mimic her best friend, but to replace her. Then Jade turned her attention to Ethan. He was everything Jade thought she deserved, stable, kind, successful. But more importantly, he adored Tessa. And that made him a target. Jade began inserting herself subtly, texting him 4 surprise party ideas, showing up unexpectedly when he and Tessa were out, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes. It started to work. Ethan, ever polite, grew more comfortable with Jade's presence. But Tessa noticed the shift. The awkward silences, the way Jade lingered too long, the sudden tension. One night after Ethan left, she confronted her. "Are you trying to get between us?" Jade blinked, then smiled. "Don't be paranoid, Tess. Maybe you just don't know how to hold on to what you've got." The words stung. But again Tessa let it go. Because even as she doubted Jade, she couldn't imagine her as anything more than a troubled friend. That was Jade's power. Her gift. She could lie with a straight face and make you doubt your own instincts. Behind closed doors she was building a case. Literally. She created a burner email, registered a new social media profile in Tessa's name, and started sending herself threatening messages, screenshots she kept as evidence. She even bought a burner phone and used it to make anonymous calls to her own office, pretending to be a harassed employee. It was meticulous, chilling. And it all pointed to one person, Tessa Morgan. The night it happened there was no storm. No thunder rolling through the skies. Just silence. Heavy and expectant. Tessa had come home late. A long day, a draining meeting, and texts from Jade saying they needed to talk. Jade said it was urgent. She sounded scared. When Tessa arrived at her apartment, the door was unlocked. Inside the lights were dim. A wine glass sat untouched on the counter. Her favorite record played on low. One Jade had always said gave her chills. But the apartment was empty. "Tessa?" she called out. Jade stepped out from the hallway, tears in her eyes, hands shaking. "I messed up," she whispered. "He's dead." Tessa blinked. "What are you talking about?" But Jade didn't answer. She handed Tessa a note, scribbled handwriting, panic laced in every word. It read like a suicide letter. Ethan's name was on it. So was Tessa's. And then the police sirens. Jade had timed it perfectly. When the officers burst through the door, what they saw was devastating. A blood-stained rug, a shattered picture frame of Ethan and Tessa, and Jade, trembling, holding the note, pointing at Tessa. She snapped, Jade sobbed. "He said he was leaving her. She wouldn't let him go." Tessa was too stunned to speak. She didn't even know Ethan was dead. But he was. His body had been found an hour earlier in his apartment. His head bashed in with a heavy crystal award. The kind given out at the annual firm gala. The kind only a few people had. One of them was Tessa. What followed was chaos. Tessa was arrested on the spot. Her fingerprints were everywhere, on the award, on the note, even on the burner phone Jade had planted in her purse. She screamed her innocence, cried that it didn't make sense, that she didn't do it. But every piece of evidence said otherwise. And Jade? She played the part of the grieving friend with Oscar-worthy precision. She gave interviews, held back tears, wore black, talked about how she tried to save them both, how Tessa had changed, how she always feared something like this could happen. It was the performance of her life, and nobody saw through it. Not yet. Detective Marcus Hale had been with the department for over 2 decades. He'd seen crimes of passion, premeditated murder, staged break-ins, and the occasional friend-turned-enemy story. But something about this case gnawed at him from the start. Tessa Lawson didn't fit. The evidence? Overwhelming. Almost too neat. She claimed innocence from the beginning. No wavering. No bargaining. Her story never shifted, not once, even under intense pressure. And Jade Whitmore? She was flawless in her testimony. Emotional, articulate, and cooperative. A victim of proximity. A friend caught in a tragedy. But Marcus had seen that look before, not in victims but in planners. Still, the DA was thrilled. It was an open and shut case. Media lapped it up. Successful lawyer snaps in love triangle murder. The narrative wrote itself. But Hale couldn't let it go. He began re-examining every piece of evidence. That wine glass on the counter? Only Tessa's fingerprints. Nothing of Jade's, even though she said she'd been drinking. The suicide note? Handwriting matched Ethan's, mostly. But one forensic analyst flagged slight inconsistencies. Curves too practiced, ink pressure too even, like it had been traced. Then there was the burner phone. One text caught Marcus's eye. Sent to Ethan 3 days before his death. It read, "You can't protect her forever." Odd thing was, it wasn't sent from Tessa's known number. But the message was conveniently located on a device planted in her purse. So Marcus had the lab dig deeper. The SIM card was purchased from a corner shop across town. Cash transaction, no cameras. But the clerk remembered something. A redhead, tall, demanding a specific brand. Said she needed it urgently. Jade had red hair. And she was tall. The pieces began to shift. subtly like a puzzle slowly turning in the light. And just like that, Tessa went from prime suspect to someone who might have been perfectly framed. Still, none of it was enough. Circumstantial. Flimsy in court. But Marcus wasn't letting it go. He went to Ethan's apartment personally, just to walk through one more time. That's when he noticed the photo. One frame, slightly askew on the wall, hiding a nail hole, as if a second frame had once hung beside it. He asked Ethan's landlord for the maintenance reports. One entry, dated 2 weeks before the murder, noted the hallway camera had been out for repairs. Those same 2 weeks matched the time Jade claimed she hadn't been by Ethan's place at all. That was a lie. Marcus Hale just didn't know why yet. But he was getting closer. Much closer. The trial of Madison Hale was one of the most closely watched court proceedings in the state that year. News outlets across the country covered the betrayal, the lies, and the shocking evidence that turned a best friend into a cold-blooded manipulator. As Madison sat in the defendant's chair, expression unreadable, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Riley's family filled the front row, their faces a mixture of grief, anger, and disbelief. They had watched her fall apart over the past year, blamed by everyone, even themselves, for a murder she didn't commit. Now the truth was finally seeing the light. The prosecution built their case methodically. They played the 911 call Madison had made with her eerily calm voice. They brought up forensic analysts who testified that the hair found on the knife didn't match Riley at all. It had been a red herring, likely planted. The GPS records from Madison's car showed her near the crime scene, not Riley's. Then came the digital evidence. A forensic tech demonstrated how Madison had accessed Riley's emails, deleted surveillance footage from a cloud login, and sent herself a message pretending to be Riley's stalker, a twisted alibi. But the most damning moment came when the prosecution revealed Madison's diary, recovered from a locked file on her laptop. In it were chilling entries, ones that detailed her obsession with control, her bitterness over Riley's perfect life, and, most disturbingly, her meticulous plan to frame her best friend. "I knew no one would believe the Golden Girl could do something like this," one entry read. "That's the point." Riley, who had chosen to attend every day of the trial, sobbed silently as her former best friend's words echoed through the courtroom. The betrayal went deeper than anyone imagined. The defense tried to argue mental illness, emotional distress, and claimed the diary was fictional writing, just creative therapy. But no one was buying it. Madison's calm demeanor, her refusal to show remorse, and the chilling precision of her plan painted a different picture. When the verdict was read, guilty on all charges, the courtroom exhaled. Madison was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Not just for the murder of Darren King, but for nearly destroying an innocent woman's life. After the gavel fell and Madison Hale was taken away in handcuffs, the world seemed to take a collective breath. Justice in its rawest form had been served. But for those left behind, especially Riley Owens, healing was just beginning. Riley didn't walk out of that courtroom as the same woman who had walked in months before. Her name had been cleared, but her spirit bore the scars of betrayal, humiliation, and public scrutiny. In the years she spent under suspicion, she'd lost her job, her relationship, and a part of herself that once trusted easily. What do you do when the person who tried to destroy you was the one you once called family? She chose to speak out. Instead of disappearing from the public eye, Riley shared her story in interviews, hoping that shedding light on emotional manipulation and psychological abuse, even from those closest to us, might help someone else avoid what she endured. Her story became a rallying cry about toxic friendships, the dark side of envy, and the dangers of ignoring early red flags. Meanwhile, Darren King's family held a memorial service that finally felt like a true goodbye. For years, their grief had been tangled in confusion and unanswered questions. Now they could mourn with clarity and a sense of peace. Madison, once hailed as a future lawyer with a sharp mind and promising path, now spent her days behind bars, silent and withdrawn. She never confessed, never apologized. She maintained the same cold demeanor from the courtroom, as if still holding on to control in the only way she could, through silence. But the world remembered her not as the brilliant student or the loyal best friend. She became a chilling symbol of what can happen when jealousy festers, when obsession goes unchecked, and when the desire to ruin someone outweighs the value of a human life. And every time Riley looks at old photos, the ones with Madison smiling beside her at birthdays, holidays, and graduation ceremonies, she feels a cold twist in her stomach, because the murderer had always been there, in every picture, smiling, posing, pretending. No one ever realized, until it was almost too late. In every snapshot she was there. smiling, laughing, framed perfectly beside the people she would later betray. Madison Hale didn't just frame her best friend for murder, she framed herself as someone trustworthy, loving, and loyal. And no one saw through it until the damage was nearly irreversible. Let this story be a reminder: monsters don't always wear masks. Sometimes they sit across from you at brunch, lend you a dress for a date, or help you move into your first apartment. And by the time you realize, they've already begun their plan. If this story sent chills down your spine, don't forget to subscribe to Crime Cortex AI for more haunting real-life tales every week. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who loves true crime, and turn on the bell icon, so you never miss the darkness hiding behind the everyday.